So we have arrived at that time again when many of us make resolutions or set goals for ourselves for the new year. As Americans, I think we like this by and large. We like setting goals. We like making plans for their accomplishment. Goals are good things. They help us to stay focused. They can help us to stay sharp. They can help us to avoid resting on our laurels and make sure that we are continuing to achieve and to strive. The beginning of a new year is also a good time to examine our priorities and ask ourselves, what were my priorities last year? Were they good ones? Were they out of sorts in any way? And what are my priorities for the coming year? In our gospel today, we are presented with the familiar story of the wise men that followed the star, leading them to the Christ child. They offered him gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now, gold is a symbol of royalty. The wise men knew that there was something regal about this child in spite of him being born in such poor conditions. Frankincense is the sweet-smelling material which was burned by the Jewish people on altars, symbolizing the hope placed in the Messiah. And myrrh symbolizes the sacrifice that Jesus would make by taking our human weakness and nailing it to a cross. These wise men were men of faith, and their faith gave them a unique privilege. They were the first among humanity to adore Jesus when the rest of the world did not know him. The journey from Jerusalem to Bethlehem would have taken a lot of effort on their part. It would not have been an easy trip. But that didn't stop them. They had a goal, and they had their priorities straight. They were determined to make this trip. They were unwavering to make the journey in order to encounter Jesus and to bring him their treasure. Ultimately, they desired to see him, to be in his presence, and to adore him. This was their goal. This was a priority for them. Now, what about us? What do our goals and priorities look like for the year 2019? Now, most of the time when we think of this sort of thing, we think of setting goals and having priorities in the areas of finance or fitness and health, career, relationships, and so forth. And these are good things, to be sure. We're just being responsible when we're looking at these things and making priorities and setting goals in these areas. But do our goals and priorities for the new year include drawing closer to Jesus, or learning more about our faith, or improving our prayer life? And if they don't, they really should. Matthew tells us that upon entering the house, the wise men saw Jesus with his mother Mary, and they did him homage. They adored him and were overjoyed with being in the presence of the child. What is our response when we are in the presence of the Lord? Are we joyful like the wise men that we read about today, or are we just more indifferent? Because remember, adoring the Lord was not just a privilege for the wise men 2,000 years ago. It isn't something that's reserved only for a select few. You and I are able to adore the same Jesus that the wise men encountered in a very concrete way when we spend time with him in Eucharistic adoration. Whenever we are sitting in front of him, whether we're here in the church and our Lord being in the tabernacle, or being downstairs here in our adoration chapel, or really in any Catholic church that has the Blessed Sacrament. You see, while participating in Mass is certainly the high point of the spiritual life, it's not the only thing. Pope John Paul II wrote that worship of the Most Holy Eucharist outside of Mass is an important practice that can become an infinite source of holiness and a practice of immeasurable value for the lives of Christians. Adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, in a certain sense, extends the reception of Holy Communion in a lasting way and can prepare us to participate more fully when we take part in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. In other words, spending time with our Lord in the Blessed Sacrament helps our spiritual life. It helps our prayer life. It helps us to grow closer to Jesus. And the practice of Eucharistic adoration has been supported by the example, the lives of many of the saints, including St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Therese of Lisieux, St. John Paul II, and St. Teresa of Calcutta, just to name a few. In fact, St. Alphonsus Liguori wrote, "Of all devotions, that of adoring Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament is the greatest, other than receiving the sacraments themselves, the one dearest to God and the one most helpful to us." When we spend time with Jesus, truly present in the Eucharist, we are given the opportunity to thank him for his passion, death, and resurrection, and for giving us a share in his divine life. Spending time with Jesus in the Eucharist can help us to deepen our relationship with him, in which he draws us closer to his Sacred Heart. You know, sometimes people will say to me, "Well, you know, Father, I just don't know what to say. I wouldn't know what to do in front of Jesus in the Blessed Sacrament." Just spend time with him. Just talk to him. Just tell him whatever is on your mind, whatever is in your heart. Maybe you have a personal issue that you're dealing with that revolves around your health or a work issue or a relationship. Talk to him about it. Maybe you have a family member who's in trouble or who's going down a really bad path and you're not sure what to do about it. Talk to him about it. Maybe there's a church teaching that you struggle with, that you don't understand or you don't agree with. Talk to him about it. Bring it to him. Tell him about it. Maybe you're mad at God for something that's happened. Talk to him about it. Tell him about it. You know, he already knows. He may just be waiting for you to tell him. And you can go in and you can be very real with him. You can just go in and sit in front of him and just let him have it. Believe me, he can take it. He's the creator of the universe. And he knows. He may just be waiting for you to bring whatever it is that's on your mind or in your heart to him. I'll use this as an opportunity to remind you that our parish-wide adoration is tonight here in the church at 7 o'clock. We call it face-to-face. I'd like to invite you. It really is a beautiful opportunity to spend time with the Lord and with your fellow parishioners. And so I guess my point in all this is that wherever we are in the process of determining our New Year's resolutions and goals, I hope that every one of us here will make at least one resolution or goal as it pertains to the spiritual life. And I encourage you to make Eucharistic adoration a part of it, because spending time with Jesus in the Eucharist is truly transformative, and he would love to see you. I promise.